Well, good evening once again. Day 175 of the Biden administration, the day the president laid out his most passionate argument to date in defense of voting rights. In a speech delivered from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, the president framed Republican efforts to curtail voting rights as an assault on our democracy and an existential threat to America's future.
The 21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting, and we're going to challenge it vigorously. It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote. Who gets to count whether or not your vote counted at all? We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. The Confederates, back then, never breached the Capitol, as insurrectionists did on January the 6th. I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying this because you should be alarmed.
The president also made his most direct attack yet on the conspiracy theory hatched and promoted by his predecessor that the 2020 election was somehow rife with fraud.
In 2020, democracy was put to a test, first by the pandemic, then by a desperate attempt to deny the reality and the results of the election, with recount after recount after recount, court case after court case. The 2020 election was the most scrutinized election ever in American history. In every case, neither cause nor evidence was found to undermine the national achievement of administering the historic election. The big lie is just that, a big lie. In America, if you lose, you accept the results. You follow the Constitution. You try again. You don't call facts fake and then try to bring down the American experiment just because you're unhappy. That's not statesmanship. That's selfishness.
The president's been under pressure from members of his own party to make a speech like this. But his rhetoric cannot overcome the reality that two Democratic bills meant to expand voting rights currently have no path to get to his desk. And today's address gave no mention of calling for an end to the filibuster, the rule requiring 60 Senate votes to pass legislation. Some Democratic lawmakers have floated the idea of exempting just voting rights bills from filibusters. NPR is reporting Vice President Kamala Harris today suggested that she has talked to senators about exceptions to the filibuster rule. Harris also met today with that group of Democrats from Texas who fled to Washington in order to block a vote on a Republican bill that would restrict voting back in their home state. The group is also pushing the Senate to pass federal laws to protect voting rights.
They want to continue working with us and amplify our voices and ask us to amplify theirs. We continue to create the pressure and the public demand for the Senate to be able to pass both these laws and get them to the president's desk.
The Texas Democrats also met this afternoon with Senate Majority Leader Schumer. Tonight, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a staunch defender of the filibuster, says he will meet with the Texas lawmakers on Thursday. Back in Austin, Republican members of the Texas House voted to send law enforcement to track down and arrest their Democratic colleagues now in the nation's capital. While that may be very Texas of them, it's also highly unlikely as long as they remain out of the state, since Texas law enforcement lacks jurisdiction in D.C. Meanwhile, members of the Texas Senate today voted to pass that same controversial elections bill that Democrats have been trying to block. On another front, the House Select Committee investigating the 1-6 insurrection is about a week away from its first hearing. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy today said he's not yet decided who to name to the Select Committee and that he hasn't decided whether he would appoint any Republicans at all. Tonight, Senate Democrats say they've reached an agreement to try to move forward with a go-it-alone infrastructure package that's on top of the bipartisan deal. The cost of the proposal comes to $3.5 trillion. Because it would be part of a budget bill, it could become law with only Democratic votes. As all of this unfolds, concern about the rising number of COVID cases is growing in our country. AP reporting tonight the number of new cases per day has doubled over these past 3 weeks, fueled by the Delta variant, showing slowing vaccination rates and even 4th of July gatherings. White House has now enlisted singer and songwriter Olivia Rodrigo to urge younger Americans to get vaccinated. She'll meet with the president, Dr. Fauci, tomorrow. Today, Dr. Fauci spoke to concerns that the special use authorization for these vaccines might suggest somehow that they're less than safe and effective.
These vaccines are highly, highly effective. 99.5% of people who die of COVID are unvaccinated. Only 0.5% of those who die are vaccinated. Even though we are still under an emergency use authorization. So when we say it's still not fully approved, the data are about as good as it gets. I would be astounded if these vaccines, namely the mRNA and the J&J, didn't get full approval.